Um, Hello, ladies and gentlemen. If you could grab a seat. Hello, hello. If you could find a seat, we'd like to get started. Matt Durkee told me that he has an hour and a half of worth of material that he's going to try to fit into 2 hours. So if you get seated, we might make it out to lunch before the Catholics get out of Mass. If you go ahead and grab a seat, thank you. Just as I got you to come in and sit down, Matt ran away. So you can do whatever you want, Matt Stern. Yeah, you can come in though. You should join us. You don't have to sit in the back either. Matt Durkee, I have it from pretty good authority. He does not bite. So if you are way in the back, you don't have to sit all the way back there. You are allowed to move forward. It'll be more engaging if you're up this way. Thank you. Gabriel Stern, you're not going to do the front row? Oh, Brian had it. All right. We got it. All right. Do you guys have Matt's PowerPoint slides? All right. Cool beans. Well, then we're ready to rock and roll. This is Matt Durkee, if you forgot who he is. He's the executive director in Friends in Action. And I would like to point out, I said he was my friend. He did not tell you that he counted me as a friend. So I'm just going to let that up to him.
Well, just before we get started, I want to clarify a couple of things. One, I do not have an hour and a half of material. We are truly going to be sticking to the Sunday school time frame that you guys have. But I do want to leave some time for questions at the end, just to give you an opportunity to ask some deeper questions about the mission, about some of the different works that are going on. But I also recognize that you're not unfamiliar with Friends in Action, at least some of you. There might be a number of you here who are either new to the church or maybe just getting involved at Lebanon Valley. And this is an opportunity just to unpack a mission that has been has a very rich and a very strong history with this church. And so again, I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to do that. Guys, is there a way I could see these slides at the back too, if that's possible? Then I actually know where I am roughly. Okay. So what I do want to start off with is a couple of things. I was sharing this with Pastor John afterwards. When I sat down after speaking during the morning service, I realized, and I don't know if this is personal conviction, I'm not going to say guilt, I'll use the spiritual word of conviction. But I sat down like, Lord, I think I missed something there. And the reason why I say that is, over the past 3 days, one of the things that's been really neat happening with Friends in Action is every year we've been running what we call an Orient program, where we actually give people the opportunity to come and see and hear who we are as an organization, what we do. It's a 2.5-day course that we offer. We take people out to the Barnstormers game. We do a lot of fun stuff with them just to be able to get to know them, then to get to know us. But it's an opportunity to dive deep into who we are as an organization, who we are as a mission, and to invite them to consider, is there a step that that God is leading them towards to taking and getting involved in missions with us? And one of the things I realized when I was up here talking and I sat back down, I said, hey, I talked about opportunity. I talked about in a short snippet as to the benefits that Friends in Action as a mission could do to help another mission organization. But I didn't talk about the urgency. And I can't dive into any kind of explanation about what's happening in the mission world or through Friends in Action without actually talking about a couple of very simple truths that I actually covered the past 3 days with this group of 10 people that came to do orientation with Friends in Action, or the Orient program. And that there is 2 places that we go when we die. When we talk about eternity, there's only two options out there. And this is something that we covered in day one. We had a group of people that came together. We got around the table. We introduced each other, introduced the names of our staff members. We introduced each other in terms of the different participants who were in the room. And I said, before I go any further into our mission statement, into our values, into our history, we need to have a common understanding as to why we do this as a mission. And it's because there's only two places that the Bible tells us man goes. It is an eternity with God, or it's an eternity apart from God. And if the only way into an eternity with God is through relationship with Jesus Christ, then that is what we have to be teaching, that's what we have to be sharing, and that's what we have to believe. In the Bible, is there any other way to God? No. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And in this world and in this culture that we live in right now, and I'm going to get into the rest of my presentation, but I just really felt convinced that I needed to start there for us this morning, because in this world and culture, there is other messages that are being put out there. That there are other ways to God. There's other ways, and that surely and truly a God of love, a God of mercy, could not have only one possible way, that there could be other ways. And that is just not true. And for us as a mission organization, we've realized that in this world, we have people that have the responsibility of sharing that truthful message, and that every day there are people that are being condemned to a Christless eternity. And every day that message cannot be shared, there are people who go without knowing. Every day, every week, every month, there are people that do not have the opportunity to hear. And for us, even today, and I appreciate very much, Pastor Brian, the words that you were sharing today, and especially the challenge of being like, if you have not put your faith in Jesus Christ, then today's the day. Yes, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. But think about those places who have not even had the opportunity to choose or to be given the opportunity to hear. And that is why we exist as an organization. And so for us, and I want to have that just to be that framework for as we dive into the next, maybe it is going to be 2 hours, I don't know. No, in the next little while of talking about Friends in Action, what God's doing, it's not just that, hey, we have an opportunity to join God in this. We need to see the gospel message go to the ends of the earth. The Great Commission says we all have a responsibility to play in that. We are all called to go and make disciples. Some can be the voice and the mouth. Some are meant to be the hands. Some are meant to be the feet. But it takes the whole body to bring the whole message to the whole world. And that's why we stick to our lane within Friends in Action in terms of moving earth to share heaven. So I wanted to share this stat with you also, and again, I'm kicking myself, so I will leave it with the church. If you guys want to share that out as something to send out to the congregation, people who couldn't be here this time, but who missed it this morning. This is some of the stats that happened over the past 18 months of God's faithfulness. And I want to share this with you so that you know, as you've been supporting Friends in Action, praying for Friends in Action, praying for Rob and Reba, praying for Emily, praying for Tim and Jan, the different things that are happening. There are things that are happening on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis, and you only see a tip of an iceberg. Over the past, and I'm going to kind of work through a couple different stats there too. This past year, we have really been focusing on water projects and water ministries. So as I shared before, we focus on infrastructure and projects in areas of limited access or limited resource. And we use those as the means by which to speed the gospel message to go forward into these places. I was in a community once where I heard a story from a pastor who was in a community. He was invited to preach the gospel there by the village chief. There had been no preaching there done before, but they'd heard about what God is doing in these other communities when they hear the word and people come to faith. And there's amazing things that God was doing through that. So this chief invited this pastor to come say, tell us about who this God is, and we'll give you 3 days. And they brought the whole village together to meet in this one room for 3 days. Day one, everyone gathered in. The pastor started speaking. Nobody made eye contact. Everybody, it's almost like this listless spirit that was inside of them that had them kind of looking around and just not engaging. It was hard. There was this kind of oppression that the pastor said. He pushed through that, and then day two, he did it again. And it was the same circumstance and the same experience that he had. So he went to the village chief and he said, Chief, you asked me to come. You said the people want to hear. Why are they not even wanting to listen? Like, it looks like there's nothing of what I am saying that they are engaging with. And the chief said, Pastor, we want you to be here, but the people can't hear you over the sound of their empty stomachs. People were hungry. What the pastor failed to realize was their crops had failed. They had no food. And so they're there to hear about the word of God, but they're also in a place where there was a physical obstacle to them being able to engage with what that pastor was saying. And that story will never leave me, because there are physical things that are obstacles to the gospel moving forward. And so for us over the past couple of years, and one of the things that God has been doing is just shifting Friends in Action to be able to really occupy a space where we can do real practical ministries in the areas of water. We've been developing some pretty big projects, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But over the past 18 months, we've had 18 water wells drilled in 4 different countries around the world. Each place where a well is drilled and put in, it's working alongside a gospel partner and a gospel ministry who are using the water as the means to open the door for the message of the truth of the gospel to move forward. It either opens a door to bring them into a community where they had no access before, or it opens the door to create a dialogue. I had a pastor, or one of our missionaries, Jeremy Effler. Here, maybe I can just go back to this. Jeremy Effler was actually sharing a story about he was in a community drilling a well, and whenever you're in, this is in Africa, when you have a big piece of equipment come in and a whole bunch of people who look like me, actually with the beard as well. I'm pretty sure so if you're gonna go on a well drilling trip, you have to have a beard. That's not true. We do have some ladies that go too. So I can't say that. But I think a lot of the pictures that have been displayed are these guys who end up with some kind of facial hair by the end of it. But he was saying that there's a group of people that have come in from different places. It just gathers the whole community around. And it's an opportunity to actually build some relationship. The pastor or the partner that we're with, they're right there in the environment and in the community as well. And they're our interpreter. And a lot of times we don't speak the language of the community. And so it's just a great opportunity for that partner, that pastor, to be able to have a reason for being there and to build relationship. And at the end of it, they come to him and they say, okay, it's great that there's water here, but why did these people come and do it? But Jeremy was telling me this one time they were drilling a well, and it's such a desperate situation in terms of what the community was, and water was gonna just be a game changer in that community. And they got down to 250, we were drilling down, we're about 250 feet, and there had been no water at that time. And then we got deeper and deeper, and the water started to come. And more people started showing up because word got out that it looks like there's water that's starting to come. The dust turned to powder dust, turned to some thicker dust, which turned to mud, and it turned into a bit of a flow that started coming out. And at 350 feet, there was enough water to be able to supply the whole community. And one of the amazing things that happened, and this didn't happen all the time, this is in the country of West Africa, in a region where it's roughly 0.2% evangelical Christian. He shut off the drilling rig, water just dripping off the back of it. And he gathered the people around. He said, let me tell you about my Jesus. See this water? You're going to drink from this and you're going to be thirsty again. But let me tell you about someone who sent all of us here. And like I was saying before, it's words taking on flesh. That's the opportunity that we have, people, as Friends in Action, when we can use physical projects to be able to be in a place to put flesh on gospel words so that people can not only hear it, but they see it and they can relate to it and they can engage in it. It's the means for which the gospel to be shared and moving forward. Some of the exciting things have been the number of teams and people that we've been sending out. So Friends in Action is not just an international ministry where we've got international workers that are placed on the field in a number of areas of service and ministry, but we do mobilize from North America as well to be sending out. So over the past 18 months, we've sent over 200 volunteers working with team leaders in over 7 countries, working in areas of construction, electrical work, solar. We've installed solar arrays for missionaries who've been off the grid, who now can be connected with people back at home connected in Bible school so that they can have seminary information downloaded. We've been able to take people off of a power grid that they were paying thousands of dollars every year for them to be able to get power, to be able to have their own power, reliable power, to be sustained in the ministries that God has called and equipped them to be serving in. We've had well drilling teams that have gone out. We've had construction teams that have gone out. And it's amazing because people have been coming to us, just finding us on the internet and saying, I'm looking for a place to use my skills. How can you use me with this? Contact us. A site surveyor said, like, I saw on your website that you're looking to do a big project and had to do survey work. Could you use a survey team to come out and do this work for you? I said, yes. And the crazy thing was they covered their entire cost in order to go and do that as well too. God is moving people and allowing them to recognize that God has given them skills and abilities to be used in mission and in ministry. And I've heard this at different times. When I was a young kid, I grew up in the Christian Missionary Alliance Church, and we heard about missions all the time. And I heard about all these missionaries who left everything behind, to sacrifice everything behind, to leave family, to leave friends, to leave opportunity, and to go and serve the Lord. And that's true. God does call for us to sacrifice and leave things behind. But I think something that needs to be better articulated is God doesn't say you have to leave behind everything you are in order to follow me. He says, I'm going to bring everything that you are because I've been investing in you for the past 13 years, 23 years, 33 years, 43 years. We had a guy come out who was 83 years old. He was a very fit 83-year-old. But he came out and he served with us for 2 weeks in Nicaragua. It's everything that God has been building into us and forming and shaping us over the past number of years. God says, I am building you and shaping you and forming you so that you may display my glories. God's inviting us to be part of his story. Sometimes, I was going to share a little bit in terms of my story. And I actually got into ministry about 25 years of age. I graduated from an engineering school in Canada. I wanted to go into missions right away, and I applied to probably about 7 to 10 different mission organizations, and I heard back from none of them. And I really felt that the Lord had actually laid that calling on my life, and I was willing to go and do it, willing to essentially abandon everything and follow him, and I was disappointed. And I said, well, God, why? I'm ready to trust you and follow you. What I didn't realize was that God was saying, not yet. And I needed a few more things in my life to come into place so that he could ready me to take that next step. And as I dive into this, I just want to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you now so I don't forget later. It could very well be that somebody in this room is meant to go, is meant to take your skills and abilities, all of the things that God has been doing in you for the past X number of years of your life, and he's preparing you to say, I need you to help take my gospel message to the people who have not yet heard. Because I was sitting in your seat 20 years ago. 25 years ago, actually. God used Tim Johnson coming to a church in Canada. What are the nations and where are the nations where the gospel has been well understood, not yet gone? And should there be a part in that where Friends in Action is contributing and being part of seeing the gospel go into those places? I wanted to share just briefly, there's a couple of focuses in our mission statement. Hopefully that shows up. I already emphasized that we support missions work in areas of limited infrastructure, and then specifically through the construction and the service projects. Every single place that we work is in partnership with a ministry that's advancing good news works or gospel ministry. We are not a development organization. We do maybe development things, but we see that as the means to the end. We will not go into a place where there is not somebody who's sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. We don't go into a place and say, okay, well, these people need water. Let's go and find somebody else to come and share about Jesus. We're focusing, and there's lots of organizations that do good works that way, and I don't want to belittle or diminish that. I want to keep reaffirming and emphasizing sacred work, mission work, sharing the gospel. It's for people who can articulate it, and it's for people who can live it out. Both are needed. I do want to give, you may recognize that man. You like that, eh, Ray? Yeah, I figured you would. So I want to focus a little bit on a couple of the people in this room. And I actually had 2 slides, otherwise that would be distracting and none of you would actually hear what I'm saying. So Rob and Reba Donnelly have been a blessed addition to Friends in Action. And so I'm going to take a bit of time just to focus on both of them. But repair ministry is huge. The number of places that we're working and serving where a vehicle is literally the means by which they can actually go and speak. And if there is no vehicle, they're not able to speak and get out there. If you have a broken vehicle and nobody to fix it, if you have a generator that is damaged and no means to be able to actually support yourself in the communities where you are, repair ministry has been critical. It's a systemic problem throughout missions where there is a focus on people who are academically and linguistically gifted and capable in going into these places. They get into the places where they're meant to serve, and they're like, we're running into problems and we're stuck. Repair ministry is huge, and that's what you're doing by supporting Rob and Reba, especially in the areas of repair ministry. It's a game changer for people on the fields. Construction, Tim Johnson has his heartbeat is for Nicaragua. I'm sure whenever he comes, he'll give you an update in terms of what's been happening amongst the Rama people. We've been working in that country for about 21 years now, in terms of active service known about and working alongside known of the Rama for about 25 roughly. We have a deep question, but because there's trust and because there is relationship, we can ask that question of you, and we're going to hear the words that come back from you. And that was what God used building buildings as the means to open the door to the Rama people's hearts. That's what you've invested in. That's what you've been praying for. I also want to recognize Emily Lingle, as she's been one of our newer additions to the Friends team. And it has been so good to have Emily as part of our communications team. Because at the end of the day, our job as we report, and even what I'm doing right now, is not sharing my story, it's not sharing Friends in Action's story, it's sharing God's story. And if you look through the Bible is not a collection of letters or books that have been written for the sake of the author. It's all meant to point back to God. And that's something that I believe we do so well at Friends in Action, and Emily has done a great job at helping elevate the story and the content and the missionaries. Whether they're serving internationally or serving from the U.S., we need encouragement in the midst of the work that we're doing, because sometimes it can be overlooked for the sake of, well, what's the big impact that's being had over there in that country or in that part? And sometimes administratively and at home, it can become discouraging because the focus can be elsewhere. And so I want to encourage you in the sacrifices that especially these folks are taking in order to serve and advance gospel ministry. It's huge. And it's been a great experience to be able to walk alongside your missionaries and our people as we move earth to share heaven. So I want to dive a bit deeper, like I was sharing before in terms of some of the different stats. We've got a number of countries. My goal this morning is just to share about a couple of our different countries, give you an update as to what's happening, and just to open the floor for any questions that you may have. We're not a complicated ministry. What I've shared over the past 20 minutes already, you can apply in any one of the different areas of service that we have. And so just diving deeper, there's some nuances. We have some countries where there's more focus on water, more focus on repair ministry and service, some on construction. And I'll unpack some of that, but we'll see where we end up in the next 10, 15 minutes. Told you I'm keeping an eye on time for you. Papua New Guinea. This was actually our first field that we opened way back in 1998. And missionaries from Papua New Guinea, so actually Friends in Action way back when was called Friends of New Tribes Mission. That was our original, it's part of our origin story. That was our first name, and then it got too long, and after you've been speaking for a while, you say Friends of New Tribes Mission, it mumbles. Actually, where did my water go? There you go. It just all gets twisted in the mouth. So Friends in Action are a lot easier to be able to communicate and to be able to share. But anyways, Papua New Guinea was the first country that we started working in. And for them there's so many language groups, there's so many different areas that were yet unreached with the gospel. Tribes were actually inviting and calling missionaries, come tell us God's word, come give us God's talk. But there was no way to get to them. It would take sometimes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of just trudging through jungle, up and down mountains. Like this is back, this is 30 years ago, 40 years ago. That's really not that long ago. But that country was so underdeveloped when it comes to, and inaccessible in terms of the geography. And so Friends in Action came in and we started putting airstrips in on the ground. And so some of our first ministries was actually plowing the sides of mountains or valleys and removing trees like this big or bigger, having chainsaws that you have to essentially go around and take notches out to be able to get to the inside because you don't have a big enough blade to go in. But God allowed us to have some great, well-equipped men and women to be able to go and serve and to do that. There's about 7 airstrips that Friends in Action was able to help put into that country between and help build between 98 to present. There's a couple of different other support ministries as well too. We actually have Mike and Ruth Butler. They're the names of our missionaries that were working there. Some of the exciting things that have come out of that has been that one of our partners, we used to support, there's one ministry that was on an island called Beam Island. One story I remember hearing was the missionary, Brandon. He contacted Mike from being on the island, and he said, Mike, I don't know what to do. We just flipped our boat, and it's sinking. And that's the only way we have to get in and out. And Mike Butler, again, he's managing this support ministry in the capital, or the northern city of Wewak in the Sepik area, so northern PNG. Mike said, I'll see what I can do to get out there. Dropped everything that he was doing. It was about a 3-hour boat ride to get out to where he was. They were able to revive the boat, or to pull the boat off of the bottom of the ocean. He took that whole engine apart, cleaned it all back out, and was able to get it going again for this missionary who would have been isolated. The cost of replacing a boat out there would have been huge. And to have the means for someone to actually come and do that right away so that their ministry can continue moving forward. That was just one example of how our missionaries who are on the ground are able to help support ministries when a crisis comes up, to be able to respond and to engage. The exciting thing is fast forward to just the other year, where not only in Beam Island, but actually some of the other areas, actually some of the places where we put airstrips in, is the NTM mission work has progressed to the point where there is complete translation of Scripture in a church that's vibrant. And it's a privilege as Friends in Action to be able to have said, we've been able to assist those missionaries be integrated in those communities and to see that gospel ministry move forward. So these are areas and ways that as an organization, we can come alongside to equip the missionaries to be sustained and empowered to continue in their ministries. So it's not just the construction, but it's also that practical service, which is so needed to help the gospel ministry move forward. One of the neat things, again, that's happened over the past almost 30 years of ministry in Papua New Guinea has been investing in national workers who've been working with us. The 2 men in that picture, Danny and Dominic, they're on either sides of the man in the middle. They were some of our first workers that came in the early 2000s. And they came in as, they actually weren't followers of Jesus. They came in from a church, but very shallow. And it was through an intentional discipleship and mentorship alongside these guys that over the past number of years, they've grown in their faith. And I think it was probably about 15 years ago, they professed Christ and have continued to have an influence in their community. One of the original plans when our missionaries went out to do the airstrips was we would build an airstrip. All airstrips needed a tractor in order to maintain it. So we would actually train the national people to be able to maintain these tractors. And the first time we actually went out into the community, Mike Butler was saying, there's no way that these guys are going to be able to maintain these tractors. Just the skill wasn't there, the understanding, the comprehension on the mechanical side. We're going to have to change the plan and do something a bit different. Fast forward to today where these 2 guys are actually training PNG national laborers in the areas of large engine, small engine mechanics, electrical works. The guys that have been mentored and discipled are now becoming the mentors and the disciplers. And in all the programs, we actually have a vocational trades program that we're developing in PNG. And one of the core areas for that trades program is actually a discipleship program. So everyone that comes through, they start off with a firm foundations, which is the course through New Tribes Mission that they offer, and they're being discipled towards Christ. And it's just really neat to see how it has progressed over time. I shared a little bit about Nicaragua already. This is a picture from 17 years ago, one of the first times that we had maybe a Bible conference coming together, opportunity to bring a lot of people and to be starting to talk about Jesus, and there would be no Christians in this crowd. And it's just exciting to think and just make that comparison today to where you have that massive group of people. They're running VBS programs. They're doing outreach amongst their own community. This is not happening because Friends in Action is organizing and leading it. This is because there's indigenous owners of the church, indigenous leaders in the church taking ownership over what's happening out there. And it's just been amazing to see what God has done. Recently, this past year, we've had a number of works that have taken place. Potentially even, I don't think anybody from this church came out, but we had people coming from Canada and the US going down, a number of wells being drilled. We had some projects that were being completed. We had a kitchen dining community center that was being established. God has done a lot over the years, and it could very well be that we're getting towards some of the tail end of ministry in Nicaragua, where it's time for us to close that door and move on somewhere else. One of the things I'll be asking you to pray for is actually Tim Johnson. He's today, right now, with the Rama for the next 10 days, and he's going to be spending time with them. There's some teaching that's going to be taking place that him and our partners down there are going to be leading, but there's also some very serious questions about the areas of maintenance and sustainability, and what does it mean for Friends in Action to be able to start transitioning out and for the Rama ownership to start coming in for some of these projects. And they're very important questions. And so I just appreciate your prayer for Tim, especially as he leads through that. I talked a little bit about West Africa, and those two guys in the picture are the two of our field staff that are out there, Jeremy and Matt. Jeremy is a bivocational pastor. He's done a little bit of everything. You may have seen him at past Friends in Action banquets. He's actually going to be our keynote speaker at our upcoming banquet, which is going to be a little plug for that. It's going to be at the Star Barn on October 22nd. And so he's coming in and sharing all about water ministry and what God is doing through water in West Africa, but also how that applies in many other places around the world. But it's been really, really exciting to hear stories from him and to be able to hear about what the ministry work is, what's doing over there. He's the one who was able to share from the bench of the drilling platform with the water dripping down at the end of it. And it's been exciting to see him not only say there's opportunities for him to share, but to be able to get behind the national pastors that we're working alongside. In this country, we are working with first-generation Christians. What that means is oftentimes their brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, all of them are Muslim or animistic. And a lot of times the people that we're working alongside have had the cost that they've had to pay in order to be a follower of Jesus is to be completely apart from the families and communities that they know. And so the opportunity that we have in coming alongside them in their ministry to show love and compassion, again, I just so appreciated Pastor Brian's message this morning, because that's everything that you said is what we support and live out. And we're seeing that happen, and to make incredible progress for the sake of the gospel in communities around the world. And we're able to support that and move that forward. And to actually give those people a connection together through the community of faith to know that they are supported, to know that they are loved, and to be able to continue to advance the ministry work that God has called them to. One of the things this past year, again, to share what's happening currently right now, 8 wells were completed in the past 5 months, working in 8 different communities and villages with different partners. We've also been able to develop some internship and housing spaces for our mission site in West Africa. Something that hasn't existed before, which I'm excited to share, is that we're actually going to be launching an internship program probably within the next year, where we're going to be hosting anywhere from starting off probably about 2 people every probably 6 to 12 months for a 1-year internship program. And it's exciting because we're looking to be investing in the next generation of those who are willing to go. There's also a big need out there. I was talking to Jeremy, it's probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and I think he's celebrating, I'm going to say 50, 51, 52. Looking around the room, some of you would say that's still pretty young. For those in ministry, to be 50, 51 years old and still slinging drill rods, it gets old and it gets tiring. And for both him and Matt, they're looking at the next generation of people to come in and work alongside. We'd love to continue to grow that team, both in West Africa. I haven't talked about Vanuatu yet, and in Papua New Guinea. We're looking for men and women that are willing to go, to serve, and to use those gifts and abilities to advance gospel work and ministry. There is so much work that can be done and needs to be done. Dorcas House is actually another West African project that we have. This one's a little bit unique, but I did want to recognize it. So we've been working with this organization called Dorcas House. It's in the country of Burkina Faso, specifically focused for women and women's ministry. There's practical skills that are taught. They have an intake program of roughly 20 girls a year It's a 2-year program, actually, and it's probably roughly 40 to 50% Christian that comes in, and then the rest are either animistic or Muslim. And the really exciting thing, as they, by faith, plan baptismal services for every graduation, and there's almost all of the girls that came in who were Muslim or animistic before are professing faith when they go out. It's this very intensive discipleship program. And it's been a privilege as Friends in Action to be able to be part of representing that ministry too. I don't know if you know much about Burkina Faso. Again, it's been very close to my heart. That's the place where I started in ministry. A number of years ago, there was the terrorist movement that came in and essentially took out the government authorities and roughly a third of the country, and they still remain occupying that space today. So it is a very persecuted country with respect to Christianity and for people living and working there. Mexico, we haven't talked very much about as Friends in Action, but we do have a well drilling ministry and a mechanical service ministry there. We head down 2-3 times a year, drilling water wells in remote communities with the Tarahumara people. That's one of the last and a very, what's the word I would use? Stubborn people group with respect to the gospel. And so there's a lot of medical ministry that's taking place. There's Child Evangelism Fellowship that's working there, NCM. We're actually partnering with probably about 20 different mission organizations through a missions hospital that's serving as a hub. The unique thing about this country is it's all happening, or in this ministry, is it happens behind cartel lines. And so the government officially is in power, but unofficially and more realistically, it's the cartel that runs things in the area. And so over the past number of years, it's been interesting, but God's allowed us to have good relationships through the hospital with the cartel that's allowed ministry to move forward. We've been drilling some of the deepest wells for Friends in Action ever there. The last one was about 550 feet deep. And we're using that little drilling rig. It's essentially a trailer-mounted drilling rig to do that work. And so God's given us some pretty skilled men to come alongside as operators there. Back in November of last year, we drilled that first 550-foot well, and the bit got stuck. That's going to be a familiar story for some of you if you've read the challenge, and I won't go into all the details. That was one of the stories that came out. But praise God, we were able to go back to that community because we had to abandon about 240 feet worth of equipment down the hole and go back and do it again. But because we learned from the first time, we were able to be successful the second time. And that testimony has been a huge witness to the community there for the sake of the gospel. The people said they worked so hard, they gave up, they walked away. And then to be able to show up again and say, no, because God's love for you, we have come back. And it was a great opportunity and a testimony for the pastors that we've been working with there. It takes more than equipment and water. I think that's one thing I want to really, as I wrap up to this morning, that's something that I want to remind you of. It's not just the people that are going and doing, it's not just the physical things that are happening there. It's our partners. We as a ministry, we can both be a blessing to partners on the ground, or we can also be a hindrance and an obstacle for partners on the ground. You can have people that have been working for 10 years in a community, developing relationship and trust, and one short-term team or one ill-placed word can just ruin all of that. And so our partners trusting us and us building relationships with them, it helps move that. It's required and essential to move that ministry forward. It takes the people that are coordinating and the administration and people behind who never actually get to the field to keep moving this work forward. It takes those donors that are giving the finances saying, I trust, I believe, I know in what the work is that you're doing, and may God bless and may you use these finances and these resources to move this ministry work forward. It takes the volunteer who's willing to leave their friends and family behind. And it takes the prayer warriors who've lifted up the villages that they've never even seen. Part of me communicating with you this morning is about trying to put some picture and some perspective for you who are praying. And as you hear the stories, as you hear reference to different things, for Rob going, for Matt going, for Tim going, like, what does that actually mean in the context of greater gospel ministry? We don't just go to build. We can do that anywhere. I could be making, well, considering I raise support, I could be making 5 times, 10 times more here in the US than going overseas or serving with the mission if I was using my skills to benefit myself. But God's called us to something else. So what's next for Friends in Action? And this is the last couple of things. We've got a couple of ministry areas that I just wanted to touch on. In Papua New Guinea, like I said, we've got a really neat opportunity. I shared a little bit about that in terms of this vocational ministry. I already shared a little bit about Tim in terms of the trip that he's on right now, in terms of what's happening for Nicaragua. In West Africa, we're scaling up the well drilling. We've got 4 teams that are heading out next year. The plan is to do 15 to 20 wells. As we add more workers and laborers onto that team, we're looking to do more work. So if you know anyone, or you yourself in this room, who are saying, I have always believed that God set me apart to do well drilling ministry, guess what? You cannot leave today until you come and talk to me. Either for yourself or to say, hey, I'm going to volunteer someone else to go and do that, and here's his name and number. Because I believe that God is actually priming us to be moving more and more into West African ministry. When you look and see where the unreached peoples of the world are, there's this place called the 1040 window, and we're right on the edge of it. And I believe that God is giving us that corner to be able to move into. A really exciting opportunity, actually, that just happened earlier this year is that Friends in Action Board approved the launch and start of a new office in the Netherlands. We have an associate who came in. We're going a bit slow with him and with his family, but he has a heart and vision. He came to me actually earlier this at the middle of last year. We got in contact and started building a relationship, and he was asking about what it meant to be part of Friends in Action. And then he said, and I won't forget him saying this, because we had actually been praying about this as a board, and something we said, God, maybe 10 years from now, we'll start a European office. And he came to me and he said, Matt, have you ever thought about doing this Friends in Action thing, about doing this in the Netherlands, in Europe? He said, I know so many people who need this ministry because they've been saying, we believe that we're supposed to be part of missions, but we don't know how to do it. And they're carpenters and they're electricians and they're plumbers. And he said his background also was in that. That's why he's so passionate about support ministry. He's like, would you do this? We don't have any organizations like this in Europe. And I was like, oh, well, Lord, I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? Say, I'll get back to you in 10 years? No, so it was actually interesting because I went to our board and I said, hey, guys, you know this thing that we said, yeah, we're not going to talk about it for 10 years? I think God wants us to talk about it now. And so it's been exciting to bring that man. Actually, he was here over the past 3 days. I got him on a plane yesterday, and I said, so where are you in terms of walking away? And he questions or doubts. And he says, if I could be any more in the glove, I am. I said, this is me. That's the exciting thing that I see that God's doing through Friends. He's bringing people that fit the glove. The last thing I want to mention about is Vanuatu. We've talked a lot about this country, and this is really a big area of both excitement, but also prayer for us, and I'm going to be asking you to be praying for us as we work here in this country. This country is in the South Pacific. We had some people from this church go out and do some maintenance work out there as well, so I believe you've probably had, or maybe you've had a report from them in terms of some of the different things that are happening at our base and ministry. We have the opportunity to work through a national pastor to impact 30 communities and clinics and villages for the sake of the gospel. There is no gospel-taking ministry in any of these communities. There's a national pastor. 21 years ago, the Lord laid it on his heart. He became a new follower of Jesus Christ. He was being discipled, and God gave him a vision about him taking light back into his communities. And so he started a Bible school. And the purpose of that Bible school is to equip lay people to become pastors or to become trained and equipped with God's word to be able to communicate it in their own language back to their peoples. And he came to us back in 2013, 2014 with another vision. He said, water is flowing down the side of this mountain. If we direct that water into these villages, it's going to open the door for us to share the truth of the gospel. And so it's been 10 years in the making almost, but this year we're drilling wells. This year, finally, ground is breaking. We've got a group of surveyors, that group that I was saying before, they're heading out in July to be able to actually map out both the elevations, the topography, as well as the route that some of the distribution network's going to go. There's going to be some clusters of wells in one area connecting to 5 or 6 communities, and then there's other communities that are going to be each having a couple of wells servicing them. We have that happening in July. We've got equipment operators going over to start working on building up our stockpiles for aggregate to get some of that work done next year. We've got a well drilling contractor who just happens to be a follower of Jesus, who just happened to be, it's a funny story, he was a German guy, got stuck in Vanuatu over COVID. If you're there and you're stuck, you might as well get married. So, no, he met a girl first and then got married. But it's just really interesting talking to him about the things that God put in his life. And I said, Daniel, it's not that you did all of this to lead to here, but we're just another step in that story of how God is using you being in the right place or being in a place at a time, willing to use your skills to advance his works. So he's going to come and he's going to drill. Something I found out back in April when I was there was that no drilling work has ever happened in this part of the island. So we're exploring. This is completely unfamiliar territory.